You gotta say that again.
Ah, shit, I gotta make it count. Let's do it.
We're cute. We're here.
We're queer.
Get used to it.
All right, guys, let's do this intro.
Yay!
Yay! And we're gonna go with a bad, a da, a ba da 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 da, a ba, a da 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 da. Welcome to the Ring of Fire, where I'm Emmy the Birth Wizard.
And I'm Alex Parr.
And we're here to remind you to breathe through tough topics and get through uncomfortable surges. So, hey, guys, guess we're going to talk about things that make people uncomfortable, like interviews.
Yes. So this is the second episode of our How to Doula It series.
Yes.
It's all about the beginnings of birth work and going back to some of the basics of being a doula and all of that stuff. Our last episode was about mentors and mentorships and trainings that we love and which ones are worth it and which ones weren't. So if you haven't listened to that, you should definitely listen to that. And then next week we will have a great season finale episode with Letisa from PS Love Mommy, where we talk about how to get more clients.
She's fantastic.
Oh my God, it's such a good episode.
It is.
We recorded it, so we're speaking from the future a little bit.
The future of the past of the future of the past. It's all, this is how the sausage is made, folks.
Gross. I'm also thinking for season 3, should I introduce myself Alex Barr, doula and educator, or is Alex Barr enough?
Oh my God, you've evolved. You've evolved since season 1 to season 2 and now to season 3. I think you should change it.
I think so too.
I think you should.
Yeah.
I think...
Because you're Emmy the Birth Wizard and I'm just Alex.
You're never just Alex.
We were just talking about this. We were at a networking event where I described myself as the sidekick of this podcast, and no one would agree with me.
No, you're
room.
Obviously not. I'm just along for the ride, man. Like, I'm over here like, oh shit. Really excited that I got invited to do this thing where I get to talk
You
sometimes.
invited me.
No, did I?
Yes, you called me. You said, hey, I want to do a podcast. And I said, oh, you should really do that. And then you called me.
Okay, so I will point out, we are remembering this a little different.
Are we okay?
Our very first meeting ever.
Yes.
You brought up podcasts are so cool. And I'm like, yeah, I love those. I had one. I would like to do it again. And you're like, oh, if you ever want to do one again, talk to me. Okay?
Did I say that?
Yes.
I was brave enough to say that.
So, second time we meet was at a networking event.
Yeah.
And you bring up again podcasts. And there should be one for doulas who want like real advice and like talking about what this work is actually like. And I was like, cool, we should do that. Because you had already essentially invited me to do a podcast. I thought I was getting a pitch in that moment.
This is so funny because I thought the whole time that it was your idea.
I had some
You
like
invited me
pizzazz behind it, but it was really you being like, yeah, let's do that. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And then you were like, no, I didn't know that's how you read that situation.
I guess as a baby doula, I was like, did not know I was that brave.
Yeah, you were being totally. But at the same point.
That sounds very unlike me.
At the same point, though, like, I am someone who approaches many people in different conversations. Yeah. And if they don't engage with me in, like, future planning or, like, wanting to hang out or whatever, I, like, walk away. So I took your, like,
no, 100% this is what I wanted. And I was really hoping that you were going to call me.
Right.
Like, 1,000%. I was like, I really hope she calls me.
So I took it as, like, oh, she wants to be my friend. She wants to do a podcast. Because if you didn't, then you wouldn't mention podcast and, like, mentioned it more than once. Like,
you're right.
There's a difference between, like, polite conversation, like, cool, a podcast, versus, like, cool, a podcast?
I thought I played it cooler. In my head, I was much like, oh, that's really cool, and, like, you should definitely do that. Like, I'm not going to jump in. That wasn't that cool.
No, and I really enjoy podcasts. Like I said, I did one before where I was solo. I interviewed a lot of people, but I ended up realizing I needed another person with me to keep it going.
For sure. Yeah.
Can I do the solo thing? Yeah. It's just not as much fun.
At that time, I was terrified to talk
At all.
At all.
Just like
look where I am now.
Totally not my sidekick.
Hey guys, you just heard our origin story.
Oh my god, we should like cut this out and like make it a bonus episode. Just our two perspectives.
I would totally do that.
Yeah,
we'll do that. That's cute.
Yeah. But yeah,
that's how we met.
That's how we met.
Now we get to share everything with you guys.
Right, Yay. And I really meant it at the end of season 1. I even said it of like, you guys have really watched our friendship grow, like, and how we interact and all of that, and like to bring it into doula work. I think that's what happens though, is you find your person in the communities and you're like, oh my god, I'm so glad I found this person that's also other weirdo that's totally into watching someone suffer until like the most cool thing happens. Yes. Right?
Yeah.
Because when I describe it to other people, they're like, that's what you do? Don't you get weirded out by hearing them be sad and in pain? No, it's great. I get to help them through it.
Something's happening.
Right.
Yeah, it's for a reason. Yeah.
Right.
And we've definitely grown our friendship and our,
for sure.
Our partnership.
What's cool though is over this break, we are going to grow this podcast even more. We have like so many plans and ideas, guys. I can't wait. You're going to see a glow up next season for many reasons. And I just can't wait. I really am appreciative of all of this. So
share this with all your friends. Post it in all the doula boards. Like, help us out while we're on our break. And we will be back very soon.
For sure. Until then, though, we have to talk about interviews and prenatals. And I want to start it off with this question. What is the weirdest or most, like, one of those questions that you've ever been asked in an interview where you're like, I don't know how to respond to that?
Oh, I already got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody asked me, what is the worst thing you've ever seen happen?
Like,
at a birth.
Oh.
Like, they were literally like, please tell me the worst case scenario you have ever seen.
I'm so glad these people did an interview with me, because I would be like, my dad getting hit by a car?
I was like, so first of all, I have a very strict rule about telling horror stories to pregnant people. I am not telling you, oh yeah, I've experienced these awful things.
Yeah. No. It also, that question could go very quickly into like trauma dumping and all sorts of stuff. So.
Yeah. And because I talked to you about this after it happened, I think it was like, will you be able to help us if there's a worst case, if there was a bad scenario, right? I get that now. At the moment, I was like,
I don't know.
Nothing. I don't, like, I really, like, it left me stunned. And probably one of the reasons they didn't hire me.
Interesting.
Because it was a high-risk birther. Totally get it. But I was literally just, like, deer in headlights. Like.
And I get that. What? That's a strange question. And that's not one of those ones that's typically on, like, those people who look up, like, the 10 questions you should ask your doula. That's not, like, a part of those 10 questions.
And it could have been, like, what different types of births have you experienced? Like, any other question, I would have been like, got it. But that one, I was like, I'm not going to tell you terrible things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I get it.
All right,
I get
what's
it.
Yours?
This happened very early on. I mean, maybe it was my second or third interview. I got asked by a first-time birther family, like, but you're a VBAC expert. How can you help us? And I had that, like, and then my brain turned back on and it goes, because I know everything about cesareans and how to avoid unnecessary ones.
Not a bad safe.
Right. And now it's what I say always. That I'm an expert in cesareans and how to avoid unnecessary ones. That's why you want a VBAC expert.
Yeah. Even
if you're a first-time birther or you've birthed several times, always vaginal. Because I know how to avoid the unnecessary ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, it like threw me for a loop because I was like, fuck, I didn't think about like if someone would try and book me who wasn't a VBACer or trying for a general cesarean.
What do I say?
Yeah, totally.
They were kind of like, why do you even want to?
Right. But at the same point, it turned into like, why are you interviewing me? Like, you're the one who called me, bro. Like, I don't know why you want me.
How do you get a lot of like first time birthers?
More than I would like. No, when they're first time birthers, typically they're very high risk situations. So
that are coming to you guys.
Yeah. I get one every other month.
Okay.
Not too often though. Okay. They're not my people.
They're not looking for.
They're not looking for
knowledge you have.
Right, but at the same point, like, I think often with first time birthers, if they think to hire a doula, what they think of is going to be someone who helps them with comfort measures, probably has more of a mom vibe, is not an advocate necessarily, like.
Yeah. You have the cool mom.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm the mom who shows up listening to 90s alt rock. That's me, who's like, hey kid, do you ever have a cigarette? Never.
I love how your first thought was offering a child a cigarette.
Yeah, because I'm like a cool mom.
I meant cool as like your friends like her and like she's a little nerdy, she's got a weird house, that kind of stuff. I don't think you have a weird house, but you know what I'm talking about, that kind of mom vibe.
No, I get you. I appreciate that compliment. No, I went a different way. I went with the
so like bad parent.
I went to the mom that I was like, she's so cool. You guys got insight on my childhood that you didn't need.
Okay, but sorry, first time mom or first time birther. Sorry, you're usually.
I think they're at least the typical first time mom is looking for comfort measure heavy, mom vibes that are like sweetness, probably more into the idea of like the magic of birth, right? Like the true like awe and wonder and like look at your body, like that person.
Trust your body to do what it can. Kind of
right. I'm not that person. I don't advertise to be that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do give off, like you said, cool mom vibes, but cool mom is also the one to be like, your mom didn't talk to you about sex? Get ready, right? Like,
you're gonna talk to people more and more like a real, and that's what I was thinking when you said cool mom.
Right.
More like a real, like.
Yeah, another human.
I'm not gonna bullshit with you.
Right, yeah. So, I don't think they seek me out, and if they do, typically it's because they're in a high risk situation, so they need someone who's like gonna give it to them straight. They're also in a situation where they're like, I want someone a little bit more fierce by me.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that have found me. I've never had a first time home birth mom ever. I have had.
Those are pretty rare too.
Right, for sure. But like, I've never had the first time mom that wants to go fully unmedicated. I've never had the first time mom that like, I have had, I think, all of my first time moms are high risk individuals who have needed extra support in many different avenues.
So like emotionally and physically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Typically there's like some sort of prior traumas, like, I mean, psychosis and that kind of thing, or even like strangeness to their case of like a brain aneurysm or like weirdness going on there, or even we're dealing with an IVF couple. Those are my first time moms. Like those are the first time birthers I deal with, is that I don't get the low risk first time.
I think there's like almost all my, like I get a lot of like people wanting to go unmedicated.
Yeah, I've had a handful.
Yeah.
I have had a handful. That's their desire, and I'm all about that. I also still talk to them about the medicated options, just because I always remind them of the story I pitched to them at the beginning of sometimes birth can take a long time, and sometimes you can sneeze and a baby comes out, so we need to prepare for both.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, prepare for that. So then someone reaches out to you.
Yeah.
You set up an interview.
Yes.
You do them all virtually?
All of mine are virtual.
Did you always do it then that way?
I did, because I didn't get my first client till 5 months into the pandemic. So, and I think I'll always be virtual. There's certain people who are like, nope, I'll be in person as soon as I'm ripe and ready. To me, I think very numbers wise when it comes to stuff like this, and I can't justify driving to a shitty coffee shop to sit there and pay probably $5 to $10 for a coffee that I actually want to drink, to wait for someone to show up and maybe they don't.
Yeah.
For them to maybe hire me, and then I'm stuck at the location because a lot of these people could just be seeing anyone, right?
Yeah,
and still sourcing,
doing multiple doulas and things like that,
and still not figured out who they're looking for per se, and like maybe even doing the thing of like, do I even want a doula? And so they're asking me a bunch of questions, and I feel locked in to this like situation.
Yeah.
Can you hear my social anxiety come out, guys? That's some major social anxiety coming out. Yeah, I do have social anxiety. So, yeah, I don't think I'll ever be in person.
My controversial opinion is, or personal thing that I do is I offer virtual or in person.
Mm-hmm.
Because I find that the people who say yes to in person are usually more invested.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've never not been hired at an in-person.
That's cool.
Right?
Yeah.
And plenty of people say, oh no, Zoom is fine, right? And it's like, sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't. Every time I've done an in-person, I get it. I really believe in like the energy.
Yeah, for sure.
And like, I think that especially in person, I can read their energy better. It allows me to like understand, like, is this going well?
Yeah.
Like, what is happening?
For sure. I think if I had an office space, I would change my mind.
Okay. So if you had a place where people could come and they could interview there.
Yes.
That's fair.
I would totally do it.
Then you can control the space, you control the vibe, like that kind of thing.
For sure. And then it's also this like set place where I'm already there.
Yeah.
So I'm not driving to do this one thing for this one time. Like I'm already doing my like office day, or like maybe I'm teaching a class later or whatever.
So
I may
set it up in that fashion. Fair.
Yeah. But I don't have that space at this time, so until I do have that space, I'm going to be virtual. Yeah. I do think it does help. Again, like you just heard, the first time birthers I deal with a lot of high riskers who are like, no, definitely don't want to meet. Don't want to meet.
And even the people that I find meet with me in person, they're usually not interviewing other doulas or a lot of other doulas. So I feel that if they're interviewing a lot of people, they feel the same way you do. They don't want to go to coffee shop after coffee shop after coffee shop, right? Like, so I wonder if the people who are willing to meet me in person already have like I like her kind of.
Well, that kind of goes back to our niching episode, right? Yeah. Like, which you guys have to go back and listen to that one. It's from season 1. But I feel like that's that benefit of niching, because I do find a lot of people that I hop onto a Zoom call with have been following me for a while, know who I am, or I got recommended a couple times. Right. Yeah. So when they're interacting with me, they're like ready to interact with me. They're not also like set up 6 other interviews and they're like trying to.
That's why I offer it, because I've never had somebody who's like, yeah, I have 6 in-person interviews. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why I typically will like at least offer it.
Yeah, for sure. And I do agree with you. I wish I could do them in person, because I think I'm very charming.
Same.
And so like, oh, you think I'm charming? Thank y'all.
And as we'll talk about, I get very nervous in interviews, and I kind of tend to like freak out a little bit internally. So, which is so funny, because that's not how I feel at a birth, right? It makes no sense to me. This screen adds another layer of like robot, like I feel like uncomfortable, like what do I do with my hands? I don't remember.
That's so funny.
And then I can see my face like getting red, and like, you
know, you can like expand their face and hide yours.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, you can hide your face.
I don't want to see my face at all.
Yeah, after this episode, I'm going to teach you how to do that. That's really funny. Just imagining Alex after this episode by herself Googling how to hide my face.
Because I'm literally like looking like, oh my god, I look like a crazy person. I'm like, does your hair look okay?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my face is bright red. Like I get like really like.
Yeah.
I can see myself, you know.
Right. Yeah. I think I've spent so much time on camera over the years, like.
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I do this.
Right.
Why is an interview hard? I literally like I don't want to take the people to take this as like Alex freaks out in interviews, therefore she freaks out in birth and
right. Yeah, I know.
Like that because it's such a different
thing. I think it's higher stakes. The interview, I think, is the highest stakes. As weird as it is, because it is the moment that you're winning over somebody's trust. It's the moment that you're selling yourself. It's the moment that you're creating connection, like to your point. Yeah. It's the moment that you've also maybe got to educate the individual on what the fuck you do, and that like sets a precedent for if they don't hire you, who else they might hire. Like,
fair, yeah.
That's
said the right thing and stuff like that because it does feel like a big deal, and I always get so freaked out by it, and that's what's so funny to me is I'm like. You're good under pressure. Like if there's an emergency, Alex needs to be there. Like I'm the person you want there, but I was that way with like stupid jobs I didn't want anyways. When I was interviewing to work at Olive Garden at 19, I was like, yeah, I think I would be good at this. Like
oh shit, dude. Now I want Olive Garden.
Terrible place. Place where dreams go to die.
Oh, but it's where families eat. Where your oh, now I get it. That's why dreams die there. But
we're not sponsored by Olive Garden. This is not an Olive Garden. Sponsored.
I will say that like I get why people get nervous during interviews. I think. Kind of speaking to my social anxieties earlier, and Alex knows this because she's been to many an event with me. I'm Emmy, but turned up to 100 at situations like that. Yeah. So I think that's why, like, I've turned the nervousness into like almost like annoying levels of Emmy because I'm like, I got to use this nervous energy for something. So I'm going to really like razzle dazzle you. Like I'm going to tap dance now. Like that's what you needed out of a doula, right? Like, did you know I could juggle? Right. Like
I am always like, stay calm because that's how you're going to be in their birth space. And that's the energy that I really bring to like this like space and like this experience is like, we can have a fun time, but I'm still like I'm the solid person in the room kind of thing.
For sure. And I think in a way by me being as big of a personality as I am during interviews, essentially the person's able to pick up like, oh, if she's this big during the interview, how big of a personality is she if shit hits the fan?
That's a great point.
Right?
Yeah.
How big and scary can she get if this is how charming she's being right now?
Yeah. That's a fair point.
At least that's how I'm going to spin it in my head. You know?
I mean, you get hired. Just so
right? I do get hired. So we're not going to take my word.
We're not going to knock it.
Right. I'm not going to take my word for it. But I also really, really credit, essentially, I wrote scripts for myself.
Okay, this is what I want to talk about. Because when you told me this,
I
was like, oh my God, that would help me so much.
Yeah. So first of all, and this is my advice to all doulas, baby or seasoned, make sure that you have a structure to your consultation or interview, however you want to call it, but make sure there's a structure and that you're the one in charge of that structuring. Mm-hmm. And so the very first thing I do is we get up on the call like, hi, oh my God, it's nice to see you in person, whatever, right? We do the niceties, and then I immediately go into, all right, this is how it's going to go, because I want to make sure that we make time for everyone to get their information out, and so that way we can also walk away from this where both parties have everything they need. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to have you guys tell your story. After you tell your story, I'm going to have questions, more than likely, so that way I can get extra context to you. Next, I'm going to tell you my story and why I do this. If I'm interviewing with my doula partner, it's my doula partner that goes next with their story. Yeah. After that, if there's any clarifying things, that's when we do it. And then I send you the proposal and we go home. How's it sound? Right?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, yep, because
Yeah.
they immediately are falling into
They're
life.
waiting for someone to take the reins of it.
They are. They really are. And I think to what we were talking about earlier of like, she's such a big personality. If this is how she is in the interview taking charge.
Yeah, it's like a good thing to see.
Yeah. Like, I'm being calm, but I'm definitely like...
I think I was approaching it more as like a conversation, which
Mm.
is how I approach, like, that's how I approach my prenatals. That's how I, you know, I kind
Yeah.
of like, this like, even like, just like this very like open dialogue thing, but
I'm jealous of
Need some
people who can
structure.
do that. No, but I'm jealous of people who can do that because, like...
it works for me after the interview. At the interview,
There you
I'm
go.
like, have I said this important thing yet?
Yeah, I have a spicy brain, so the ADHD gets pretty bad. So if I'm doing the structuring not for them, mostly for me, so
Yeah.
I don't get lost.
Oh, you best believe I'm doing it now too.
Right, and it's because like I'm actually very jealous of people who can do the conversational, like
Yeah.
we're just here to hang out and get to know each other. Like I think that's beautiful, and man,
Yeah.
talk about the vibes must be so nice.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, as someone who interviewed doulas, that used to annoy the fuck out of me. Like,
Yeah.
I get, like,
Do you
I
structure your, we'll talk a little
Mhm.
later about prenatals, but do you structure your prenatals that
heavily,
way too?
heavily.
Okay.
And there's conversation aloud,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, there's breathing and all of this, but it's structured because, again, I think of it as information exchange.
Mhm.
If I don't get this information out and exchange it, then I failed you.
Okay.
So that's also structured.
Okay.
I also sit on the ground
So-
so I can stay grounded during the thing.
Because I can see the interview being structured, being helpful. You get through it, especially if they're interviewing multiple people.
Yes.
They can kind of get the idea of what's going on, and you get to hear all that stuff. Because I have ended interviews and been like, I did not ask any of the questions I was supposed to ask, and that's what I talk about. Is like, I almost like black out a little bit.
Mm,
Like I literally sometimes I'm like, what did I say?
yeah.
Like the calls
yeah.
ended, and I'm like, what did I just do?
Yeah. So part of that scripting is I do have certain questions I ask every time after. When they tell their story, I ask the curiosity questions, and I'm asking for basic physiological birth questions
Mhm.
that maybe they didn't fill in. Again, guys, I work with mostly VBACs. So
Yeah.
they're telling me prior birth stories, and they're telling me stuff like, and then I was at a 7. Were you effaced at all? Like,
Yeah, asking
what
to
was
get more
station?
details, yeah.
Like, I need more information. Do you know about OP? Like, or Sunny, right? So that way I can get the most information possible. And it's also my way of testing how much information do you know
Mhm.
for real?
Yeah.
Or how much of this is like blurry details?
Yeah.
Are you someone who's already been researching a ton about birth? Or are you someone that I'm going to have to like make sure you choose the package with childbirth education?
Yeah, so you're getting the full, yeah.
I'm already like picking up off of them what I might need to do to be their doula.
Yeah.
The other thing that I make sure to do is when I tell my story, I make sure to structure it a bit around theirs. I might leave out certain details from my story so that way it's a little bit easier to see that like mirroring.
Yeah.
Or I might put different details this time because of a different mirror being in front of me.
And I do that as well.
Yeah.
Especially if it's someone who's a plus size client, and I'm like, I want them to know that I really relate to something that they said.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
I also always pitch to the partner. That's one thing that I do have in my script of the thing I always say. And I'll tell you guys, but don't use my jokes. Write your own jokes. It is always, partners are my favorite. My partner at all of my births, if you do the combined time, did over 86 hours worth of support. So I really want to make sure you are comfortable and well supported.
Yeah.
The other thing is my job is to make you look really good. My job is after they're holding the baby for them to look at you and be like, I want to have another baby with that person. And I've done my job.
Yeah.
If that happens, because my hope is that at the end of the day, individuals with dementia can recall their birth stories. And I really want, if we're going to forget a detail at the birth, that you forgot about me and you remembered how much they showed up for you.
Yeah.
That's my pitch that I always say to the partner, and usually they're like, oh my God. Like I can always see the partner
They get
soft.
excited.
I see them soften because they realize I'm there like as a support figure, right?
To like help.
Yeah.
Because you do hear a lot where like partners are not sold on doulas at all.
Yeah, exactly.
I can do it, you know.
Yeah.
I'm always like, someone needs to remind you to drink water, and someone needs to remind you to like rest, and you need to be able to step out of the room and take a breath and like not leave your partner alone, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so I always pitch the partner at some point. I usually do after my story clarification. See, I'm going through the script right now. I usually explain, because I do work in a partnership, how that works and how that will improve their outcomes, yada yada, right? Their experience. And then at the end, I'm like, okay, so these are the packages and what they look like. Don't write this down because I'm about to send it to you.
Yeah.
I just want you to listen.
Yeah.
And I want you to listen because I'm going to give you numbers. And if they immediately freak you out, just remember that I do payment plans and you can break it down as little as you need to. All I ask is that it's between you guys, like it's between you guys, God, and just getting me my money by 38 weeks.
Yeah.
That's all I care about. Yeah. So when you see the numbers, when they pop up, again, realize that you have lots of time.
They're going to be big, but you have time. You have payment plans.
Right.
And you are getting a partnership and
right.
sort of stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And then that's how I leave the interview. Like, I can't wait to talk to you guys again soon. Yeah. No matter what, reach back out to me if I'm not your doula, because I'm super connected to the community. I've mentored people. I've educated people here. Like, if it's not me, please let me at least give you other names of something that you do need. And I find that one to be like the cherry on top, because suddenly they're like, oh, she doesn't need our business.
Yeah. And do we want the person she trained, or do we want the trainer?
Exactly. But
fair enough.
I think it does help, because suddenly they're like, oh, she's not like desperate for us. She's literally doing the like, and if you come back to me, it means it's true love, right? Like,
see, I think I do the opposite of desperation, where I'm like, yeah, and like if I'm not your doula, that's fine. like
you
not in a mean way, but like
you fuckboy them, like I guess if you don't text me, it's fine. I'll go out with some other girls.
I do it in like a nice way, like you know, you're gonna find the doula that's right for you, and like if that's not me, that's fine.
Right. I just can't commit at this time to you.
I'm gonna get better, guys.
I think,
but like I'm like the employee that like you weren't sure about, but you were like you're really glad you took a chance on. Yeah. So I think I'm that kind of doula as well. And it like stuff like this and social media, I think, has already been helping me, because people are seeing a little bit of my personality before I meet them. Like, I think that helps so much. Couple of interviews, I'm like, okay, like they like I can like relax a little bit, right? Like, so then it's maybe not as like stressful. Maybe I'll just get better at this, like, you know.
Right. Just like everything else in life, you just need practice, right? And that's something I highly encourage everyone to do. Is one, like the scripts helped me out a lot, because I was able to, one, not get lost while doing this, but it also was something that I was like, this is me truly showcasing my personality, getting out all this information. And it's much easier to memorize a thing and pop it out than it is to like try and
come up with it on the fly kind of thing.
Clever, all of that. It also comes from my background. When I worked at Disney, we had scripts that we followed, and you were sent to the back to learn the scripts. You were sent to the back to learn like the magical language and all of this stuff. So it felt comfortable to me that like, I'll write a script. I'll just like do this thing.
Write a script, an outline, something. Don't just be there like, oh.
I think the biggest thing to remember, though, is you're interviewing them. Yeah. Like,
and I've definitely had some where I am like, if I'm not your doula, that's fine. Right? Like with the different inflection, right? Like, that is fine with me.
So when it's those people, my trick is this. I'll ask them at the end of the interview, like, when was your due date again? I know you said it at the top, but like I got lost in like your story and all of that. When was your due date again? And they'll say, I'm like, oh shoot, Oh, man. I'm all booked that month. But here's some good news. Like I said, I am super connected into this community. So here's some other names. I immediately sent it in chat, and I'm like, bye! So if you've ever gotten someone who's reached out to you because they were like, Emmy recommended it, know that either you're a baby doula and I'm trying to legitimately help you out, or you're legitimately helping me out. Like,
I didn't want to pay your price.
right? Yeah. But I think those are the biggest thing is like you're also interviewing them. I think that helps my nerves quite a bit.
Yeah.
Is remembering like this is so much like energy work. Yeah. Like not to get woo about it, but it's like energy work and vibes and like.
Well, and that's why I was leaning more towards the conversation type thing, and I can make something that's like an outline still feel like a conversation.
Oh
kind
yeah,
of thing.
for sure.
Because I'm like, I want to know if you're open to a doula, and if I can give you what you need, and if the way that I approach being a doula is what you need.
Yeah.
Because you know what I'm saying? Because it's not always going to be a good fit, and I think that especially early on, I was very much like, oh, this is a make or break. I have to do well, and everybody should want to choose me, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, that's not really the ideal, because you want people who are really there for you and excited to have you at their birth.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, you ready to talk about prenatals?
Sure.
This is my favorite. I'm so excited to talk about this because I hear this topic. It's a hot debate. Yeah.
Why is it such a hot debate?
It's a hot debate because doulas are trying to either be validated in what they're already doing or to feel superior that they're doing something better or differently than the other person. Also, baby doulas like to offer too many prenatals.
Oh, it's too many.
I've heard like 4. I've heard like
what the fuck are you guys doing at 4 prenatals?
I like essentially a childbirth class at that point. Like I've heard that. Like I've heard like, oh, we have to like meet so many times so that we can like monthly or whatever, so that we can like really establish this connection.
This is where I'm going to be rude to you guys. If you have to meet that many times to get a connection to that person, you never will get a connection with that person, like ever.
So I think it's just like a misunderstanding.
Also, what's happening in between? Are you not texting them? Are you not like in contact at all? It's only in person or no connection? Like y'all don't send gifts or like selfies? Nothing?
I tell people that like, oh, we're gonna be friends.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I'll be liking your Instagram posts. Like,
right.
Like, we're gonna be friends. Like, we're gonna like
know each other.
Buddies, right? We're gonna know each other, even if we're not meeting like 4 times.
Yeah, I do wonder that though, because like I'm on the side of the fence where people are like, "That's it? That's all you do?"
Well, obviously that's not all you do, Emmy. Like,
that's
Emmy
all you do? That's all you do?
Emmy is in constant contact with everybody at all times.
Oh my god, so much contact that I'm like, please stop contacting me. But I'm always the first, like, I'm always the one that's like, hey, it's Monday morning. Guess who has a man crush Monday? Here you go. Like, can't stop.
Your clients man crush Monday?
No, I don't know where that thought came from.
Okay. I was like,
I literally
your Monday.
No, routine? You know how you said you black out? I think I just blacked out.
I was like, are we sending our clients who we think is hot?
I have done that before now that I think about it, but it's not a common. That's not a common thing.
Who was the guy?
You know what's really funny about that though? That wasn't a guy that I said. It was, well, I ended up sending a Woman Crush Wednesday to someone who really liked, who really enjoyed DC films because her husband and I got into a debate over DC versus Marvel. Look, guys, this is the shit that happens when you text your people enough, right? Like, you talk about nonsense. So, we were talking about DC versus Marvel, and so I did as a jab, like, Woman Crush Wednesday, and I did Captain Marvel, right? Because, right? And I left something underneath, like the better superhero than Wonder Woman. Like, so I don't know how you guys aren't getting.
I don't think Captain Marvel's that great, and she's still better than Wonder Woman.
She is. But my point being, like, it goes back to this thing of, like, how are you not making connection? Because there is the ability to do it via text and like messaging.
And, like, checking in, and you can share.
Did y'all not grow up in the internet age? Like,
you can share education and information the same way as well. And from the baby doulas that I've heard say that, it's like from a really sweet place of like, I just want to make sure that they're comfortable with me being in that space, and it's an intimate space and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I get it. But again, if they hired you, they know
who they're hiring,
right? So
at least hopefully.
I would say that I feel that 4 is a lot, right? 4 prenatals is a lot. Then my question would be like, are you doing more prenatals just because they hired you earlier? Right? Because I could see that.
I don't.
It's kind of like, I know you don't. Let's talk about it. Emmy, how many prenatals do you do?
I do 1.
Okay.
I do 1 between 32 to 38 weeks.
Okay.
Because I want it as close as possible to when you're giving birth.
Sure.
But a lot of my people hire me right after they pee on a stick.
Yeah.
So I have people on my books as soon as they're like, my average people hire me at about 12 to 13 weeks.
Okay.
So they're waiting a pretty long time to see me in person.
Yeah.
But all the way through that's how you end up in DC versus Marvel debates.
Because you've had enough time to have those conversations.
Over the months. And they're giving me phone calls after like prenatal, like with their providers and stuff. I do something called a team meeting with home birth. And the reason why is like they're controlling that space so much, my home birth families, that I make sure to do an extra visit or at least time my prenatal at the point where their midwife is there so I can meet them.
That's a good idea.
And the reason why is because a lot of times with home birth, you're the person of contact to the midwife.
With the midwife first.
Right. Just so the midwife knows my face, knows that like, hey, I'm going to be the one calling you at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
You're not going to see Susie Jen's and Jen Susan's number on your phone come up. It's going to be mine. Here's my number. This is how long I've been doing this. Yes, I take it very seriously. Yeah. Like, if you need me to do any stuff, like
please, like, don't be afraid to do that.
Right. Yeah. And it's also my way of making sure that like home birth midwife, just like I would do with a provider in the hospital, knows I'm on the team.
And it's taking you seriously. Yeah.
Yeah. So I only do 1. It's between 32 to 38 weeks. I prefer them later as much as possible. They are 3.5 hours long.
Which I think is the caveat, right?
Right.
If people are doing 3-hour long prenatals, like that's about ends up being the same as what you're offering, right? Just at different intervals. Right.
And mine comes from from 2 places. One is a practicality thing. Again, majority of my people already have children at home.
Yeah.
Asking individuals to find a babysitter or someone to have a watchful eye on their children while I'm talking to them about education and advocacy and all the stuff you speak about in prenatals multiple times. Boy, that's asking a lot of privilege.
Yeah.
Boy, they've already paid me $1,500 to $2,000 to be there. Like, that's a lot for me as an individual to ask. 2, I really do break down the numbers. People on average live about 25 minutes away from me. That's gas that I'm spending. That's also the amount of time I'm spending in my car, almost an hour on the way, with full trip in the car. That means I still have to do childcare for my kids. That still means I still have to feed myself at some point, and I'm probably not home for dinner. Usually these happen in the evening, so that I'm putting miles in my car. Like, all of these things.
Which, side note, you should be doing for everything.
Right.
You're doing for prenatals, you should be doing birth, postpartum. All of that time, all of those expenses should factor into your cost of how much you are putting in to know how much you're making as a doula. That's like basic business sense. I think people forget that a lot, and you can really lose a lot of money in that area.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not tracking it. So when I work out my hourly, like, of how many hours I spent with that person, I factor the prenatals, the driving time each time, the birth, and the postpartum visit.
And the parking lot, where I always have to pay fucking parking.
Yeah.
Like,
Parking, like, all of that stuff. I had a snack, I save my receipts, or I write something down if I'm in the hospital and I bought something at the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Because although people don't love to talk about the business side of it, it still is important to make sure that's factored in.
Yeah, exactly. And all that's going to happen is if I add on another prenatal, I'm going to stress myself out because I'm going to need more resources at home for me to be able to do this job for this person who I want to provide resources to, right? Yeah. And if I'm pouring from like a half cup and then I make it empty in order to add on, no. I will caveat all of this with, I do make it available for you to purchase an extra prenatal. So if you are a client who's like, no, I got to see you more. All right. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but yeah, we can see each other more.
PC versus market.
Right. Exactly. So the virtual one is $100. That's an hour. The in-person is $150, and that's still an hour. So you're only buying my time for an hour at a time. So sure, go ahead, add it on. Free country. Actually, it's $150 country in my land.
If I remember correctly, you will let them add on like going to appointments with them as well.
Yeah. And I charge that one by the hour.
Yeah.
So if your provider took an hour to see you, that means I still collect that hour. So I charge $35 an hour to go to your appointments
like
with you.
Like an appointment with you if you need it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do.
Do you find people ask for that?
I've never had anyone actually go through with it, but I do have it out there.
Yeah. That's what I've always said I wanted. I needed.
Yeah.
I needed someone to remind me, because that was another situation where I would be at an appointment and I would like black out and I would forget the questions and I'd forget the research and I'd forget like what I wanted and I'd be like, yeah, okay. Like, really, especially because when I was pregnant, it was very pre any of this. Pre being a doula, pre-understanding all that stuff, like pre-finding that confidence in, like, oh no, you get to tell them what you need.
Yeah.
So, like, I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I've always offered it because I was in, just like you, of, like, pre to all these days. I felt overwhelmed, and I really needed someone. It truly comes from the neurodivergencies that I have. I needed someone next to me taking notes. Yeah. I needed someone who was like, this is what was said. This is how it was translated. Because I would go home and be like, I think they said I'm no longer allowed here.
Yeah.
But maybe not.
Why? And why didn't I ask that question?
Huh.
Yeah. And
then they mentioned something about magnesium. I'm pretty sure that was bananas. Magnesium? Bananas. One of the two. Right? Like...
Do people ever buy the extra prenatals?
I have had people buy extra prenatals.
Okay.
And usually with those, I just split the 3-hour prenatal for them in half because I'm like, that way you're not overwhelmed. Like if you're someone who's already asking for another one, then we just split the book essentially in half. So that way it's an hour and a half for each of them. So yeah, essentially I just made more money and don't tell them. Shh.
Okay, so
I also have the option of, let's say you're an individual who bought my really big package that comes with all the shit. Yeah. And you're like, I really don't need a childbirth class. I don't need a VBAC class. What can I do? You can turn it into a prenatal if you want. Yeah. I'm happy to exchange it out with that. Yeah. Or trade out your photography for an extra prenatal. Okay. But any of those can be traded out for an extra prenatal. Okay. So it's up to them though to voice that. Yeah. So yeah, I find that it's very rare for people to do it, and I've never had anyone be like, I didn't learn enough during your prenatal. Yeah. I felt like we never made a connection. Like I've never heard that. I can't get rid of these people. Like
I've never spent a few hours with people and not been connected to them.
Right. Yeah.
We friends now. Like
right. We're buds. I have like most of these people, I send them out like their first birthday card.
Yeah.
Like I'm in their lives forever.
Yeah.
You picked me. Sorry, you paid me money, and now forever,
Yeah.
you're one of mine.
Yeah.
So yeah. But I do think it's an interesting debate that happens because I've had it several times of like, I just can't.
I got to go to a first birthday party.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, those are sweet.
It's really sweet because like all my certification births are, the babies are about to turn 1 or in the process of it. So
That's sweet.
literally like, happy birthday to, you know.
That's sweet.
It's cute. So.
A bunch of mine had their first birthdays, and it happened to be when I was at births each time.
Oh no.
So I will have 1-year-old birthdays and 2-year-old birthdays at the same time next year. But yeah, I do think it's an interesting conversation around it, and I do like get very like obstinate when it's brought up of like, what, why only one? Yeah. And I do think people have this image of me go
the why only one. Like, you get to do what's right for you, and you get to do what works for you and your clients, and like, that's it. Like, if you want to do 4, do 4. Like, if your client wants to see you that much, cool.
My thought has always been, but I'm not an educator. Yeah. But I'm not, like, that's not the role I'm filling there. So why am I going so many times to teach these people this stuff? Yeah. If they need me back over to teach them more about physiological birth, they should have taken the childbirth class.
Yeah, because that will tell them everything they need to.
Right, but I don't need to be stepping into that role and massage therapist and like this and like therapist. Like,
maybe that brings up a point. Maybe people are afraid to give them the resources to go elsewhere, kind of thing. Like, if this is an issue, this is who you should see. If you want more education, take a class. Like, maybe it's like, no, I want you to stay.
You know what's interesting is, like, with you bringing that up, I am like realizing something about myself in general. I feel my role as a doula goes in this order. First is advocate. Mm-hmm. Second is Rolodex. I'm here to be a resource guide. Yeah. Right? And then third is educator. Yeah. The last thing I should be doing on that list is obviously like emotional support kind of like fills the sand gaps between those. Yeah. But the last thing I should be doing is stepping into that educator role. My hope is that I'm stepping into that role when it's like, hey, I don't remember this bit, right? Like, why is the doctor asking me this? Yeah. Oh, okay. Here's the moment to the
word. Do you know what this means?
Right. Yeah. That's my moment.
Cytotech, like,
right.
You know, if they're talking about induction, that kind of
right.
stuff. Yeah.
That's the part where I'm like, yep, I'll be an educator. Yeah. But my first one is advocate. My second one is resources, and my last is educator. So I wonder if people have theirs flipped.
I think I would be willing to bet that, you know, a lot of people think like education is such a big part of it, and it really is. But
then why aren't they seeing educators?
Yeah.
Or are you someone similar to like a doula talk who does like photography and doula work? Are you someone? I literally have one sitting next to me. Are you someone who's a doula and educator, and this is your way of almost like
a doula-catator?
A doula-catator.
That's terrible.
Oh my god, I want it though. It's going on a shirt.
I'm a doula-catator. It sounds like I'm saying dictator.
I fucking spam us immediately if you need this shirt.
Doula-catator.
Doula-catator.
Oh, we'll make
it's TM. It's taken.
Okay.
None of you bitches take it. Doula-catator and doula togs. Oh my god, doula-catators. But I do want to ask you, do you feel like you're essentially, do you have a package, I'll start with this one, where you're an educator and doula for the couple?
So I do, if you are my doula client, you get $100 off of a childcare class. So it's just like, if you want to add that on, you get a discount from it. If not, no worries. And especially, I had recently one of my clients ask me, like, is it okay if I take like a hypnobirthing class? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, and they were like, well, you have classes. And I'm like, yeah, but that's kind of like, my classes are built for like first time parents in the hospital, right? Like, if that's not you, I don't want you to feel like
you got to do it.
You got to do it. I do find myself sometimes pausing and saying, do I need to give all that information, right? Because as an educator, it's very easy for me to like information dump,
Yeah.
right? Which is what I would do in a class. And if someone had a question, I would go into like more detail and like the nitty gritty of what this is and what it means. As a doula, I'm asking other questions.
Yeah.
Do you want to know more about it?
Yeah.
Do you need some research, right? I'm not just like, here you go, right? Because if I'm your educator, I'm assuming, well, first I ask, like, are you okay with learning about this or me talking about this? Because I always, especially if it's a tricky conversation, like if we're going to talk about cesareans or we're going to talk about informed consent, I say, I'm about to talk about this. Is that okay with you? Are you comfortable with that?
Okay. I have more questions about that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Because I feel it's necessary and like beyond necessary that everyone has to talk about cesareans. We have to have that conversation. What do you do when they're not comfortable with it? Like, how do you actually have that conversation then if they're like, nope, not down for it? Like, what gets said?
I've never had anybody tell me no.
I've had plenty of people try to tell me no, and it's a no-go because if you hired me and we're talking about this.
For my classes, I'm very specific about content warnings and this is what I'm going to talk about. If you aren't comfortable talking about that, I'm not going to make you, right? And in my classes, one of our like ground rules is like you get to participate how you want to participate, and if you want to walk out of the room and take a break, that is fine. Because you are allowed to do that, right? Like I make it very clear, and that's why I set up the content warnings like literally before the slide. Like, this is what I'm going to talk about. If this is tough for you, that's fine, right? As a doula, I've never had anybody tell me no, but maybe it's like the way I ask.
No, I'm genuinely curious about this because I'm also an educator, and I didn't think to do this. You're making me ponder on things, because maybe I'm being a bit of a jerk. Like,
well, my thought behind it was I don't want to trigger people who are not ready for it. So sometimes the warning of, hey, I'm going to talk about this is enough to like, okay, I'm ready to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
I think again, no one's told me no, but I think if someone told me no, maybe I would offer like to send some information home with them, right?
Okay, like, on your own time.
Yeah, like I have cesarean handouts and I have like handouts about different things. Maybe I would send that with them and hopefully they'd look into it themselves. As a doula client, I don't know, because I do make cesarean plans with people.
Yeah. Because the only way so I have softened over time. Yeah. I used to like make people learn all about it. Yeah. Now I do a quicker thing, which is I start out the conversation with, hey, we're about to talk about cesareans because I have to be the bad guy. I want you to tell me one thing you need to know about cesareans and one thing you want to know.
Oh, that's good. And
each person who's in the room, who's going to be a support person or the birther, has to come up with those answers. Okay. And then we cover those things. And if I find there's something that they also should probably know, then I throw it in there because we still do a cesarean plan together. Okay. But I think that's interesting because I've been told no, even on me being as gentle as that, of like one thing you want to know and one thing you need to know.
Nothing.
No, I don't want to know anything because that might like curse the birth, and I'm like,
and I know people feel that way. I really try to bring it up and like, these things happen and I really want you to be prepared about it or prepared for it, kind of thing. But I do find as a doula-catator,
right? It's gonna happen. We gotta figure out how to spell that.
I have no idea. I really do handle those situations differently.
Yeah.
Someone who's hired me to be their educator versus someone who's hired me to be their doula, I am going to approach that differently because I think they're different roles, right? Like you said, as a doula, you are educating in some ways, but it is different than if you're in my class and I'm talking about this kind of stuff.
For sure. I am curious because we're talking about essentially how we do prenatals. Do you find, do you do more than one? Are you a one or a twoer? Because we didn't answer that question for you.
Okay, so I do 2 prenatals.
Okay. How
They're
long are yours?
About an hour and a half each.
Okay.
I do one either once they hire me or at like 20 weeks.
Interesting.
So if they hired me at like 30 weeks, it'd be 30. And then my second one's always between 36 and 38. So the first one is more of like it's all about the birth plan, right? Because I want to give people time to think about their options and their choices. So we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about, like, we're going to go through the birth plan, and it's going to be more of a conversation, and I want to hear how you're feeling, and I want to hear any past birth stories, like more in depth. Like, I really want to get into that. And then, because what I do for my clients is I have a longer birth plan that I use just to like write my notes on, essentially, and I turn that into like a one sheet.
Interesting.
For my clients to bring to their birth.
Okay.
So that there's not I don't have a 5-page birth plan, but there's not like 3 or 4 pages of birth plan to hand to a provider.
Right.
But so I do that one, and then I do the 36 to 38 week, because we're going to talk about what does early labor look like. We're going to talk about when you call me. We're going to talk about the epidurals and the cesareans, and we're going to talk about all of that stuff, the early labor comfort measures, like all of that stuff closer to when it's going to happen.
Interesting. Okay. I think the other question I had is, one, I think it's interesting that you still call it a birth plan.
Well, I know.
No. But I think it's
birth preferences.
Does it? Okay. Because I call mine birth choices. These are the choices you're making, right? Yeah. Because to me that felt more concrete than like preference. Like, I prefer Coke over Pepsi. Like that's
a
how.
Good one. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I call it choices, but I always think it's interesting what language is used around that. Yeah. That activity.
I put birth preferences on it.
Yeah.
But I don't like the hate of birth plan.
No, I don't either.
Right? But and the reason for doing it at the first prenatal is there's time to research, right?
Yes.
There's also time for me to understand where maybe your fears are, and maybe where the things you're struggling with, and that kind of informs like what I'm going to text you over the coming weeks, and what I'm going to reach out to you about, and what I'm going to ask you, kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I also do too, the reason why my childbirth classes like cap out at about 2 hours is there is a point where people stop listening to you.
Oh, for sure.
Right? There's 1,000% a point where their brains are full.
Yeah.
And especially if it's someone who hasn't done this before, it can like
overwhelm
be a
them.
lot.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I also I usually see people at night, like 4 hours at night would be a lot.
It is a lot.
Right? So if I'm meeting
being someone who does it a lot, it is a lot.
I'm meeting you at 5, we're there till 9, like, when are you gonna eat dinner? You got another kid? When are you gonna put him down?
Right.
Like, that kind of stuff. And like, I am also very like family centered. Like, you don't gotta hire a babysitter. We'll talk around a toddler if you're comfortable with that, right? Like, but I always give the option. Do you want it to be at home around everybody, or do you want to go meet at a coffee shop? Because I will go to a coffee shop if you feel more comfortable. Or like, do you need the separate space kind of thing? So I like to give a lot of options in that sense.
When I always do it in their homes, because that's also their opportunity to give me a tour of their home. So when I show up in the middle of the night, I know where things are.
That's smart. I like that. That's very smart.
But yeah, it is a lot, because I typically show up at about 4:30. That's usually when I show up.
If you like eating dinner with them? Yeah.
Yeah. And usually because they will get a babysitter, or mother-in-law will come over, or someone's there. Yeah. I usually am eating dinner with them, which talk about like breaking connection and breaking bread and all of that. The other thing is kids are usually away, but I always bring the kid a gift.
Aww,
because I'm a sucker. And so I always bring them a wand and a mini birth wizard badge that they can wear.
Oh my God, that's so cute. I'm going to die.
Because they're a part of the birth team too. So, yeah. So I make sure, it's also because I always try to make friends with the cats. and
Yeah.
the dogs and whatever animals are also running around in there, because I also want to make sure if I enter that space that the animal is like, oh, okay, whatever.
I offer it because I do feel it's like where you're comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I find that some people aren't comfortable at home, but almost everybody has me meet them at
Yeah,
home.
for sure. But if you're doing two, it makes sense. Like, do one in a coffee shop and do one in the home, right? Yeah.
So, and I'd like to be like, you can have your toddler here, right? Like,
that's
you
a
don't
big
have
one
to
of mine.
apologize.
Yes.
Like, you can have your kids here. You can have a life. You can be a person. Like,
yes. Yes. Yes.
know?
And I have had people who are like, we need to get a babysitter. It's okay.
That's fine.
Guess what I brought?
Yeah.
Crayons. Like, a lot of times I have crayons with me and an extra coloring book because I also have kids. So I have that.
You know how it is.
Yeah. And I've always had people like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, it's cool. I'm just going to make a paper airplane as I'm talking to you about vaginas. It's great. Like,
yeah. Like, I get it. I'm not mad that your toddler is talking to me. Like, it's very strange how apologetic people are, especially in their own homes for their children.
Yes.
I'm like, it's cool, right? Your toddler could smack me in the face, and I'd be like, okay. Right. My toddler smacks me in the face all the time. So I get it, right?
Yeah. I think it's also interesting, like, just off of, like, this conversation alone of, like, hearing the reason for having two versus having one, and we're citing the same reason. Yeah. Isn't that so funny?
Because it's not about more connection. I have literally been at people's births where I just talked to them on the phone. I've been at backups for birth, like a backup for a birth before. Like, you find your groove. Even if we aren't buddies, we can be buddies, right? Labor takes a long time. Most of the time, right?
Yeah.
We have time to talk. We have time to chat. Like, you have time to get to know that.
Also, my hands are going to be on your naked body. Like, you're going to get into me. Yes, I get it. Right? It's fine.
So it's like, I'm not necessarily worried about the connection. I'm more worried about, like, are you going to feel comfortable? Are you going to absorb this information? Like, are you going to be ready for this information, kind of thing? So.
I think that's very funny, though, how both of us cited the same reasons, just for different outcomes.
I also like to meet them earlier. Like, people who hire me early, I like to meet them at, like, that 20 to 24 week mark if I can.
That's interesting. Yeah, I purposely, like, still keep it all virtual or via phone and all of that. But at the same point, we're checking in so often.
I'm checking in, like, at least once a week.
Yeah.
And that's not including, like, if they call to, like, tell me something or text me about an appointment or anything like that.
I think it also helps that a lot of these people are going to practitioners, I know, or because again, my second priority is resource and Rolodex. I mean, I've had people ask me, like, where's a good place to get a pedicure?
Oh. So
I have gone and been like, oh man, I guess I'm getting my pedicure at the same time. Right? Like, they're asking me for things where I'm like, I could tell you more stuff. Right, exactly. And then that way it doesn't have to be like you pay me on the clock. Oh no, I happen to be here at the same time. Yeah. Right. So, I think that's another thing that should be noted. It's not like I'm like,
I really want to be like, I really feel the doula is the extension of the community.
Yes.
And like, I'm like, you don't have to, but like, I want to see the baby pictures.
Please show me the baby pictures.
Please show me the baby pictures. Please, like, invite me to stuff. Like, I will be there, right? Like, it does not, I feel like sometimes people believe that because they're paying you, it's this very cut and dry thing.
Oh, for sure.
You know? And sometimes if that's what you want it to be, that's fine, like, as the client. Right. But also at the same time, I would love for you to be an added person in my community.
Yeah.
You know, I would love to know that you're supported.
Yeah.
And I also know that, like, once someone knows you, right, and you're that person that they trust, maybe you are the person they call postpartum.
Yeah.
Maybe you are the person that they open up to a little more, or they ask for help or ask for resources when they're not going to, especially if we talk about the postpartum period, how hard it is to reach out once you're already in it is rough, right? Yeah. To find a person and find a therapist and call them and, like, all of the steps to that.
Yes.
can feel impossible,
Mm-hmm.
that I really want to be that like safe person that they can call.
For sure. Also, have you ever been to a baby shower of one of your clients?
Mm-mm.
Dude, I've learned so much fucking tea at the baby shower.
Have you?
So much fucking tea. Suddenly I'm like, oh, grandma's here. Tell me your birth story, grandma. So I know all the family trauma.
Well, that's something that I started doing recently with my childbirth classes and put into my doula. Is I do what?
Like you're tracking family traumas with it.
Well, I ask in my intake form, tell me about your family.
Yeah.
Tell me about your family history.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of information there.
Yeah.
And it really helps, especially for the class, because I started for the classes and I was like, oh, this is actually a good, like, starting point.
Right.
Because it gives me questions to ask. It gives me maybe some things to hit on so that, like, you feel safer and more comfortable.
Oh, for sure.
Especially if there's this, like, scary thing.
Yeah.
But I ask about that in my
forms. It's always been so interesting. And I rarely go to them. I only go to the ones where it happens to be convenient for me to go. Mm-hmm. And also it's a client that has an extra bit of my heart.
Yeah.
I have lots of clients. Not all of them have an extra bit of my heart. I do love my children differently.
It happens. It's all good.
So I'm not one to like deter other doulas from doing it, but I do make them aware, like, realize that your time is valuable, and it's also not cool to market at this person's baby shower.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's a different topic for a different day.
I honestly feel really uncomfortable. When I was at that first birthday party, she was like, oh, Alex was my doula. She was so amazing. And I was like, a little like, I wasn't going to tell anybody who I was. like I felt a little like, I promise all the pregnant people, I was not trying to market to you. Like, I'm just here. I brought my kid. We're having a good time. Like.
Right. That's funny. Well, I want to encourage everyone to know that if you haven't found your footing yet with prenatals or interviews, I promise there's a different doula out there who's like, I want to teach you that.
Yeah.
I want to do mock interviews with you so that way you feel comfy.
Yeah.
I promise we're out there.
Or you can go back and forth, like,
right.
with someone else who's new. Like, they're, like, and the more you do them, the better you'll get, and the practice you'll get. And, like,
yeah.
It's hard.
Yes.
It's hard, but you'll get there. And again, the people who are right for you will see that.
Yes.
Right? I just admitted that I was terrible at interviews. I still have been hired by people, right?
Right.
Like, it's not impossible.
The other, like, that other side is, like, prenatals are something that you learn and you grow into. And my prenatals look completely different than when I first started.
Yeah. Same already.
Just like my postnatals look totally different. How I doula looks totally different. Yeah. So don't feel like, oh man, they all got it figured. We're all figuring it out together.
Yeah, and it'll be different in a year or two. Like, again, like, it's not like, I think sometimes people are like, oh, I fucked that up.
Right.
But no, like, you literally now you know a different thing to do. Like, then you get better at it. Like, every birth, I'm like, oh, I could have probably done this, and this differently, right? Then you take that to the next thing. It doesn't have to be like a guilty thing or like I feel bad thing. Like, you're doing the best with what you got. And, like, I think it's important to remember that.
Oh my God, you gave the pep talk this time.
Yay!
Yay! Well, guys, I think that's it for this episode.
Yeah.
Until next time, I'm Emmy the Birth Wizard.
And I'm Alex Barr, doula and educator.
No, say the word.
No.
Say the word.
I don't want to.
Aww.
Doula container.
Yeah!
Bye, guys!